You could start off by sharing a little bit about your background, City of Folsom, and your background with the Connector JPA, and tell me about what it meant and how you got so involved in this project.
Well, the simplest part first, the background from the City of Folsom. I was honored and asked to run for City Council and had a lot of support, was elected in my first try. 3 years later, I was elected by my colleagues as the mayor. This kind of my career took off from there. Three main things that I concentrated on, not only during my campaign, but while I was on the City Council, was fire, police, and transportation. Because at the end of the day, all those are integral for everything that we do. And we have so many deaths at that time on White Rock and Grant Line because people get so fed up with traffic. And I can say that because I was born and raised in Southern California. And as a fireman paramedic, I was always on the freeways or some street because somebody was in a hurry because they got stuck in traffic and they did something stupid and we were there to pick them up or scrape them up, depending on the case.
How is a JPA formed, and what was the incentive, I guess, for the City of Folsom to join into JPAs? Because you kind of lose a little bit of the influence from a council perspective, but you're joining a regional board. What's that like from your perspective?
Believe it or not, the first day of the first JPA board meeting, I knew everybody personally anyways quite well. So I said, guys, we just got to make sure we leave our egos at the door. I said, at the end of the day, we're doing something for the people, and that's why we're elected officials.
Tell me about the SACOG and the formation of the connector.
It was a difficult project initially to explain to the board what we were doing and why we were doing it, because there was too many ideologies that got into the way of a board at the time. That board, the SACOG board. We had some jurisdictions that weren't necessarily affected where the roadway was going to go through, but they were very vehemently against any new roadways because everything to them was sprawl inducing. And number two, not everybody wants to live in a city. They don't mind living out in open space, or open areas, or having an acre lot instead of that. And I think the city has recognized that, City of Sacramento, and they've done a much better job than what their ideology was when we were trying to form this thing.
Mr. Steve Miklos, it's so great to see you.
Mm-hmm.
I am so happy that you are here. And you were the chairman when I was hired as the executive director. Within about a week of me getting the job, you said, Derek, we have to go to Mandaris. We got to have lunch. And you downloaded onto me all about staff reports and, all the things that you wanted to see as chair of the JPA. And I wanted to invite you on here today to share some of the origin stories of this project, because you were in the thick of it, right? You were on the SACOG board. You were mayor of City of Folsom. Title for life, right?
That's what I've been told, yes. It's quite the honor to actually have someone say that to me.
Maybe you could start off by sharing a little bit about your stories, your background, City of Folsom, and your background with the Connector JPA, and tell me about what it meant and how you got so involved in this project.
Well, the simplest part first, the background from the City of Folsom. I was honored and asked to run for City Council and had a lot of support, was elected in my first try. 3 years later, I was elected by my colleagues as the mayor. This kind of my career took off from there. And one of the three main things that I concentrated on, not only during my campaign, but while I was on the City Council, was fire, police, and transportation. Because at the end of the day, all those are integral for everything that we do. Whether you're driving from one side of the city or not, or a freeway or going out of town or whatever, but they're all co-connected. And I think that's probably from my firefighter paramedic background as well. See that, recognize it, and know how it needs to be dealt with.
Sure.
And also, we instituted on an annual basis a survey that went out to all the residents. What's most important to you? Fire, police, and traffic. Yeah. There you go.
Potholes.
Yeah, that too. Yeah, but I mean, anything associated with traffic, which again is transportation.
Yeah.
I was very, very fortunate to have such a good, cohesive group on City Council. I think we had the same group together for at least 16 years. But even when we had some new ones come on in the group, if you will, we never missed a beat. In fact, over 90% of our votes are 5-0, because we got on the same page, because we listened to each other. We understood what the residents wanted. We understood what the processes were to get where we needed to go. Mm-hmm. And hence we kind of moved forward with that. And we brought those same commitments to all the different regional committees and commissions that we sat on. I was fortunate enough, I was on SACOG for a better part of 22 years, I think, might have been 23 years. So I saw it from a very small board of like 9 people, I think it was, or 7 at the time, up to what it is now. So it was very small.
Right.
But even then, despite some, lively debates and discussions, we got a lot of things done. Then I moved over. I was chair of STA, Sacramento Transportation Authority, for a while. I even was chair of LAFCO for a while. So there's, and by design, quite frankly, and my colleagues were very kind in allowing me to move to the different chairs, if you will, to the different commissions and stuff. Bottom line, I needed to learn more. And that was the avenue that allowed me to learn a little bit more. And fortunately, I think we all did that on the 5 of us. We did trade some of the things that we were sitting on, went over here, went over there, and this and that. And then some that we really, really liked and just stayed there because the institutional knowledge, depending on where you're at, in my case, SACOG, proved to be very, very valuable since I went through 3 directors.
Incredible.
And some of the stuff never got passed forward. So the segue to that is when I came over here, and I was on the original committee when we formed the JPA for the connector. And that was just out of a discussion, for lack of a better term, with some of my colleagues that I was already on SACOG with. And we got to talk about transportation, congestion, air quality. And then I forgot honestly who brought it up, but somebody brought up the fact that, we have so many deaths at that time on White Rock and Grant Line because people get so fed up with traffic. And I can say that because I was born and raised in Southern California. And as a fireman paramedic, I was always on the freeways or some street because somebody was in a hurry because they got stuck in traffic and they did something stupid and we were there to pick them up or scrape them up, depending on the case.
Red asphalt.
But yeah, and the sad thing was we had a couple of naysayers originally when we talked about doing what we're talking about doing. But we had some strong leadership on that original board. And I think with Rusty Dupre from El Dorado County, Jim Cooper from Elk Grove, I think it was Dave Roberts from Rancho, and honestly, I don't remember 100% who and it might have been from the county.
Donatoli.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know what? And it was really cool because though the 5 of us had somewhat differentiating type ideologies, this one we were 100% focused.
Sure.
And as I know, when you were working here before we became director, that we were still struggling with the same issue that started from day one: how to solve the Sheldon issue without taking out some very, very valuable and historic property.
Right.
There were some other issues up and down the corridor, so that was one. But at the end of the day, in our early mission statement conversations, if you will, the main focus was reducing congestion off of Highway 50, which would improve air quality, improve the attitude of the drivers.
Yeah.
So we don't have a bunch of road rage.
Right.
Yeah. Attitude's everything. It's how you look at it.
Oh, look at it today. Look at Highway 50 today.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, don't even get me started on that project. But it's better late than never. There's a history behind that I'll share with you too. But anyway, and then in addition to that, we all knew from the people I talked about, we knew what the failed statistics were on White Rock Road. And you notice I said it very slowly, otherwise I'm going to sound like, some wabbit.
Bugs Bunny.
And so we said, we got to do something about that.
The safety.
Yeah. And so as you and I got to know each other and we had that conversation, one of the things that we were very, very fortunate to end up with, at least with the city of Folsom, was Will Kempton, was our assistant city manager when these discussions were going on. He was also the assigned staff person to me, to STA as well as SACOG, which was a huge benefit to us because before we hired him as assistant city manager, he was our transportation consultant.
Yeah, I was going to say he was probably the director of Caltrans or something, right?
He eventually became director of Caltrans and even became director of transportation in Orange County.
Yeah, that's a pretty good hire.
Yeah, it was. He had Smith and Kempton, and DJ Smith was hugely valuable to the city as well, because between those two gentlemen, I got an incredible education and insight to where we needed to go, how we needed to get there, and what was the end result going to be. And, recognizing we all had, it's going to be a long process because you're talking about something that was going to be a lot of change, a lot of construction, a lot of red tape, for lack of a better term, property acquisitions, things kind of thing.
Yeah.
So in one of our first conversations, Will and I were talking, and he said, I got an offer to be Caltrans director. And I said, wow, we're right in the middle of what to do with the Wiggles on White Rock Road.
The Wiggles.
The Wiggles. The Wiggles was a series of very hard turns.
Sure.
And there's, I think, what, 4 or 5 of them possibly. I don't remember the exact number. But that accounted for almost 95% of the fatalities because people were driving too fast. Right. It wasn't necessarily car on car. It was rollovers. That was the majority of them because they're going too fast, even though it was well marked, well lit. So I think with the assistance of, I know for a fact, with the assistance of Mr. Kempton and through Caltrans, we got a $22 million grant to start and show progress for our vision of a connector by getting rid of those things and straightening them out.
I remember, I think it was Prop 1A, the congestion mitigation improvement account.
That's exactly what it was.
And I would say that was like 2014 or when that opened, like when it opened up.
Yeah. It's kind of like, I'll even step back further, but on a parallel, if you will. We as a city had the buses that would take workers downtown. We had the bus route, and we had several buses. And then we were approached about light rail. And everyone, light rail, this and that, and so on and so forth. And I remember doing an interview with Tom Sullivan years after it opened, and he says, well, we're hearing that the ride on light rail takes a little bit longer than the bus routes, and so on and so forth. And I said, well, it depends on who you're talking to. I said, but at the end of the day, we've taken a lot of traffic off of Highway 50. We've cleaned up a lot of the error by not having the buses down there, whether it be diesel or otherwise. And I go, and you know what? Most people still feel much safer on the light rail than what they were telling us they felt on the buses.
Interesting.
And that's what we said was interesting. And we just heard, some people would show up to the different routes that you could get on the bus, and they were very undesirable because they would just create some issues while you're on a bus.
I understand.
In the middle of traffic, bumper to bumper.
Right. I can understand.
So the compliment we all got from Tom Sullivan was, I think you guys have the perfect solution with the connector.
Wow.
And then he asked me if I'd move to Sacramento and run for mayor. So Tom, thank you. It was very flattering at the time. So, but I still give credit to all the other jurisdictions that had been putting this thing together and stay committed to this thing because, early on, kind of like I shared with you before, there's going to be some unhappy people. There's going to be some happy people. Our job as the electeds is to look at what is best for the majority. We're certainly not going to ignore the minority. Well, I've always welcomed minority opinions. Even during council meetings, I've changed my mind because I heard something that was never shared before. And, hey, that sounds like a better idea. And my colleagues and I would talk about it, and we would do it at city council. Well, we had the same attitude with the connector board for years.
Yeah.
And it worked well.
You're saying these things. You had a city council that was together for 16 years. Mm-hmm. That's incredible. And then the JPA being formed in 2006. It seems like when I go back and read that you guys were absolutely unanimous in those early functional guidelines, the vision statements of what we were trying to solve.
5-0 every time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was some of that, how is a JPA formed, and what was the, incentive, I guess, for the city of Folsom to join into JPAs? Because you kind of lose a little bit of the influence from a council perspective, but you're joining a regional board. What's that like from your perspective?
Well, as I said, believe it or not, the first day of the first JPA board meeting, and I knew everybody personally anyways quite well. So I said, guys, we just got to make sure we leave our egos at the door. I said, at the end of the day, we're doing something for the people, and that's why we're elected officials. And it's sad that a lot of people don't carry that perspective, whatever level they're at, city council, all the way up to whatever. But I was fortunate enough, and I think, and I hope the others appreciate that attitude, because we all did it that way. Mm-hmm. It wasn't about parochial or not in my backyard or no, you're wrong, this and that. It was like, how do we get there?
Right.
And so we just basically took the attitude, how do we get there?
Yeah.
And it worked well because then, in fact, it was funny. I think it was in the first 2 years, 3 out of the 5 jurisdictions, 5-0 votes to move forward for their portion of the connector. We were one of the first, along with El Dorado County.
Yes.
And I think that was a testament to Rusty Dupre because he has a very well-spoken, articulate way to explain to a county that normally doesn't jump into these kind of things because they think it's, sprawl-inducing and so on and so forth. But to his testament and his colleagues, they went, you know what? This will solve a lot of our issues getting bogged down on Highway 50 going through our county.
Yeah.
And I was happy to see that. Jim Cooper was the same way with Elk Grove. They never hesitated, you know, and I can see a little bit of hesitation certainly from Mr. Natoli because we hadn't figured out what we're going to do with Sheldon. But all 5 of us and even the years I was there, and then even I heard in the years I wasn't there until I came back again, that was the number one thing. We wanted to make sure we could preserve that part of our history of our county. And I still are committed to that day. It needs to be, just like we were looking at, as an example, we're talking about preservation. You know, one of the things we looked at when we were doing the sphere of influence, let alone annexation of the city of Folsom, first thing we said, besides taking it to the public, you know, we set aside 1,000 acres of total open space.
Right.
Can't be touched. In the old days,
that's south of 50.
South of 50.
Right.
In the old days, before I got on council, the councils then were counting your backyard and parks as open space. And that's just wrong.
Yeah, you're gaming it.
Yeah. And so that was one of the things that we, as a council, and I know it still exists today, we don't count that. Mm-hmm. It's true 1,000 acres of open space, and we have a commitment to preserving the 16-acre Oak Grove that's at Prairie City and 50, because there's a lot of natural habitat in there, vernal pools, all that kind of. It's actually really nice to kind of wander through there.
Sure.
And then we have, I think, almost 200 acres of parks south of 50.
Yeah, what a commitment.
That didn't get counted in the open space.
Yeah.
They're parks. And we try to line them up next to schools, similar to what we have some of our newer schools inside the city limit, because it's an opportunity for, especially elementary schools, instead of just bouncing a ball on blacktop, they get to run around on grass and kick a soccer ball or hit a softball or stuff like that. Mm-hmm. Kind of a different approach than just all pavement. So
it seems like it's worked well. The connector was completely integrated into the circulation plan, the land use plans. The connection points are spaced well. They're very clearly articulated as to the access control and the Class 1 bike path, right? Integrated throughout the entire plan area, the connections to the Class 1 bike path.
Yep.
You know, it's that commitment to alternative modes.
Yeah, and I still couldn't agree more with that, which is why we were so strong behind it in the beginning. Otherwise, you're creating just another 2-lane freeway, right. You know. And most importantly, in my opinion, there would be a lot of unnecessary takes of property, unnecessary relocation of the habitat in the area. But that wasn't our intention. Our intention is to do exactly what we used to call it. We wanted to make it a parkway. Mm-hmm. We wanted to make a better mode of transportation to get traffic off 50. So I think we've done. Now you guys, because I'm not in the mix anymore, but I think that the connector has to be recognized for the fact they've done everything we said from the very beginning that we would do.
Sure. So and protect. Made, promises kept.
Cheap little novel idea.
I want to update you real quick on the Sheldon because the Elk Grove City Council has taken what we call precise roadway plans to council that are preserving those areas. And they're using roundabouts, which, I think when the JPA was first envisioned, that wasn't on the table. And it was something that that community has been supportive of because it will allow slower speeds, but keep things moving through there. It allows for, the commercial area to remain intact, and there's not going to be any acquisitions of, those buildings. So that's still happening.
I have to applaud everybody that made that decision and is carrying it out because that's a promise we made to Sheldon. Mm-hmm. And so I'm really, really happy to see that promise is being kept.
Yeah, good.
That's a big one, especially you hit it right on the head. When you're going through that area, we don't need 70-mile-an-hour idiots going through there. And I say that because anyone that's listening to this, if you're one of those idiots, slow down, please. And it just helps the preservation of the area and the quality of life in that area. Absolutely. And keeps things moving more efficiently. Yes. People go, I hate roundabouts, it's going to slow us all down. So, yeah, but at the end of the day, it's safer, it's more efficient, and that's the promise we made. We'd take care of that area, as well as everything up and down the corridor.
Exactly. I want to ask you about some of your leadership style. And the reason why is it was so unique to me to come here, meet with you when you were chair and I was executive director. And one of the first things that you remember, I remember you telling me was about staff reports and the clarity of the message that needed to be presented. and it stayed with me, right? and I recall you saying that don't overcomplicate the simple topics. And so, how many years were you on city council and all these boards? I mean, it feels like several different decades. What's kind of your
24 years total?
24 years. How would you describe some of your leadership style to staff when you're on those boards?
Well, I like the way you put that. Staff to me is very, very valuable. You make them part of the problem, you make them part of the solution, and you make them part of the implementation. And so let's say, guys, gals, let's identify the problem first. I don't want a 15-page report identifying a problem. If you have to use 15 pages, you haven't identified the problem. I said, so when I came time to discuss things, or when I was mayor and created agendas, I wanted to see a staff report that had a paragraph describing the problem. I wanted a few paragraphs in the middle of the thing saying, this is how we're going to get there. And the last paragraph is what you need from a vote from us. Because if you can't do it that way on a page, maybe a page and a half, you haven't really defined exactly what you want to do and how you're going to get there and how we're going to be able to present it to everybody. Because I wanted staff reports to be almost a standalone explanation to the people we were serving and knew exactly what we were looking at, when we're going to do it, how we're going to do it, where the money was coming from, and all that stuff. I don't want to bury them in 15, 20 pages of a staff report. And you saw when you and I talked about, changing the agendas, if there's a file and receive, to me, okay, you've given it to the board members and file and receive, and the public's there, they can get it in the back, or, if they ask, they get on mailing list, they get the same thing. Why talk about something if we're just going to file and receive it? Why do we have to open it up as a conversation? Otherwise, it'd be an agendized item for a conversation with a vote, if you will.
Great point.
So to me, that gave the public more opportunity to participate in those meetings rather than taking an hour of things that were just file and receive. Let's get down to the meat and potatoes and let's get the job done. And so that was basically what my message has always been on city council, and all my colleagues I was blessed with had the same that way. The city managers that work with me were the same way. And then the city department heads, they went, interesting. And that actually made their job more efficient and easier because they weren't getting bogged down with a bunch of meeting requests or explanations and so on and so forth. Right. Case in point, when I first got on city council, I was asked to redo the historic district plan.
Okay. And
with the vice mayor, that was Cindy.
Job.
Yeah, and that was with Cindy Dow. And so, okay, so we sat down with the original people that were assigned to us. And after about 3 meetings, I walked out there and after the third meeting with the vice mayor, Ms. Dow, and I said, we haven't done a darn blessed thing in 3 months. And I still don't know what we just talked about this morning for the last 2 hours. And so I went to the manager with her and we said, we need to find somebody that gets it done and gets it like we do. So we were assigned a person that sat down with the vice mayor and myself. We talked about what the issue was, how we wanted to get there and so on and so forth. And I said, I don't want 3 notebook of volumes of pages for someone to figure out what we can do in historic district. Within 6 months, Cindy Dow, myself, and it was Pam, who's still now as a director and planning directors, sat down and in 6 months redid the entire historic district plan, made actual districts within the district, and so we had a subject. So you have a river district or you have this district. So if you're building or improving one of those areas, you just go right to that section of one notebook that's barely an inch thick, if that, and it tells you exactly what you can do and who you need to talk to.
Incredible.
So we went from 5 volumes to 1.
Well,
that's always been our theory, and that's how I've always operated.
I love it. And I can tell you as a frequent visitor of the historic district, it's beautiful. I mean, it just keeps getting better too. I mean, the restaurants and the investment, sidewalks and
amphitheater.
Yeah.
We played there a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh man, that's great stuff.
But really, at the end of the day, you gotta, in my opinion, I don't care if you're the oldest employee in there or the one who just got hired. In my opinion, that's your team. And the team should be able to voice their opinions throughout the process of what's being created or what needs to be implemented. Because you know what? They're also the ones on the street. They're also the ones maybe behind a desk, but they may see things that we don't, and maybe it hasn't gotten articulated to us. So I was a big believer of to the department head's credit, bringing the person in charge of who was putting that program together, let them come to city council meeting and present it to us. And then we could ask questions because something might come out that didn't make it to paper.
Yeah.
And you know what? I think that was very much appreciated because I wanted to hear, and my colleagues wanted to hear everybody's opinion.
Sure.
And we were blessed with the city managers that said, go for it. I think you should. We'd always let the managers know, hey, I want to talk to the department head, or I want to go talk to this group of employees and so on and so forth. And sometimes they came with us, sometimes they didn't, because they knew what our intentions were.
Well, you definitely put me on the spot a few times as a project manager here. So
yeah, but you always came through. You knew exactly what we were talking about, and you always came through. And you still do.
Thank you.
Based on what you told me about Sheldon.
Thank you. Tell me about the SACOG and the formation of the connector. Well, how did it take a long time? What was that like? I mean, because I feel like that's what, early 2000s or late 90s? Like, can you share a little bit about some of that experience?
Well, it was a difficult project initially to explain to the board what we were doing and why we were doing it, because there was too many ideologies that got into the way of a board at the time, that board, the SACOG board. But I think, in my opinion, with Dave Cox, who was the chair of the supervisors at the time, and then Neela eventually came on, so we had both of them. They took a leadership role on behalf of the county to articulate what the position of what they would be looking for and how to look for. And certainly they got their information from Mr. Natoli, which told me they got great communication going on up there, which really made it helpful. But then we had some jurisdictions that weren't necessarily affected where the roadway was going to go through, but they were very vehemently against any new roadways because they said everything to them was sprawl inducing, stuff like that. And they had and I love the city of Sacramento, don't get me wrong, but there's not enough space for everybody down there. And number two, not everybody wants to live in a city.
Right.
They don't mind living out in open space, or open areas, or, having an acre lot instead of that. And I think the city has recognized that, city of Sacramento, and they've done a much better job than what their ideology was when we were trying to form this thing. So it was definitely an uphill battle. We had a couple directors that weren't enamored with the original thought. I think it got moving. I think it got better traction when Marty Tuttle was running the show at SACOG, quite frankly. No disrespect to any other guys, because I got along with all of them. I think they're very, very, very knowledgeable and incredible at what they do. But when Marty took over and after taking over from the one that we unfortunately had to let go, things accelerated from there. And Marty had a way of being able to talk to the board, walk them through all the benefits of what we were trying to do at the JPA here. And you know what? They started to buy in.
Good.
And when I say buy in, nobody wants to be sold. You have to give them enough information that they will buy.
Interesting.
And that's where we were lacking. We were not giving out enough information to the board members. I mean, Dave and I and Roger could talk to her blue in the face, Rusty, Jim Cooper, they just weren't understanding it enough. We don't have the transportation jargon, so to speak, that you guys had the expertise on. So Marty brought in the appropriate people to be able to share that expertise. He brought in Mike McKeever at that time and worked for Marty. And that's a lot of things accelerated. The board still was wary of taking some transportation funding of some projects SACOG felt were more important than the JPA corridor. And so that took a little discussion, if you will.
Sure.
And more times than not, we got money out of it, but usually not to the extent that we needed to make it happen. So it's been a clawback quite a bit. And then going forward, it just got a little bit tougher because everybody wanted money, and the money's been shrinking. And, it's like, man, I just wish people would recognize, I mean, we're certainly a lot better than a train going to nowhere, in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, but it got to a ballot measure.
Yes.
2004, that was passed by 75%.
Yes.
I'm glad you
brought that up.
I struggle to see something that popular today on any question, to be candid, right? But at the time, transportation investment was extremely popular, 75%.
Yeah.
How did you guys do that? Because we're not seeing numbers like that today on any type of transportation investment.
Yeah. Well, it's the dynamics in the economics now compared to them are so different. But going back to the original question, we did that because we showed them and told them and participated and welcomed them. We had several meetings in the city of Folsom, community meetings, inviting people in. I don't care if you lived in El Dorado Hills or Rancho Cordova or Orangevale or whatever. We wanted to hear people's opinions. And I think by leaving the invitation open for everybody to talk about it, not just ones that lived in the jurisdictions affected, that helped us formulate the opinions and what people were thinking about transportation. And I think, quite honestly, with the 5 jurisdictions behind that ballot measure was huge. And that told everybody they're committed. This region is committed to doing this because we want all the stuff we talked about at the beginning of this podcast, everything better. And so it's a little disappointing that, we're still having to fight the battle, because you took something that was incredibly popular, had a landslide opinion vote to build it. And here we are today, and we still have some unfinished segments. And that, to me, is just plain wrong, absolutely wrong. And I'll go back a little bit, if I may. I use a parallel of when we were doing HOV lanes on Highway 50. Everybody was on board, but at that time, the city of Sacramento representatives did not want an HOV lane going through the jurisdictional part of the city of Sacramento. And that was the current ideology of that city council and that manager. Okay, you got to respect that. I mean, they know their city better than we do. Here we are fast forwarding. What's in there now? That could have been done. I mean, we're talking almost 20 years ago.
Right.
That could have been done with a lot less disruption, because we wouldn't have the numbers of people we have today trying to put that project together.
The 6-year-long construction nightmare on Highway 50.
And unfortunately, you look at the amount of fatalities and accidents. I mean, it's off the charts.
Yes.
It would not have happened back then because of the population difference. And that's why I keep saying that. We were looking so far down the line of what the populations were going to be. And it's not like we were making up numbers. All the jurisdictions had them. All the boards had them. Because you would get not only your local from California, you'd also get them from the national, execs letting us know what's going on. So it's just a matter of taking that approach and taking that attitude and said, it's coming. We got to deal with it now before it gets here. Not it gets here and then, got to fix it. And unfortunately, we're doing, we're trying to fix it.
Yeah.
So it's disappointing.
I will say that Folsom has taken the proactive approach. And I know a lot of the staff over there has kind of changed over, and that's what happens. But, myself and our team have had such a wonderful working relationship in the city of Folsom. Over the years, the public works directors, the city managers, all the city staff. And I routinely will hear that they want to see the other segments go too, because Folsom residents will benefit not just because of the roads in Folsom, but because of getting out, heading towards 99 and 5. And so, I hear from Folsom staff that they want to see the progress in the other jurisdictions, but Folsom has led. In fact, Steve, I don't know if you recall this, but I mean, I'm sure you do, but like that first initial investment came, you had a leadership role in that. And we were able to get White Rock up and reconstructed. That's the very first expressway segment. And so thank you for leading that, because that's what got us the initial funding. We were able to leverage it. We got state funding, we got some additional funding, but it really came from that seed money.
Yeah. Well, and that's one of those good stories that you can show. Hey, we promised you this, and here it is.
Mm-hmm.
And we promised you at a budget. We brought it in, I think it was slightly under. I think the budget was $22 million. We came in like 21.5 or something like that.
You got some really good bids.
Yeah. And so, yes, we did. And I thank Mr. Kempen for a lot of that. But also, going back to the city of Folsom and their commitment, one of the main reasons, and I said it at many council member, we have incredible employees. And if you don't make them part of the team, then to me, that's disrespectful. And it's because we made them part of the team. We were one huge team. And that, quite honestly, was a lot of reason why I ran for re-election, because there was a couple of times I wasn't going to, and I got talked back into it by the employees, because they appreciated the respect that we were giving them and the role I took in creating that environment. And I was very blessed that the rest of the council took that same environment as far as communication, involvement, and commitment to them, giving us their ideas. And that's why it doesn't surprise me that City of Folsom staff is still at that level. Sure. They've always been there and love them to death. I wouldn't trade them for anything.
Well said. All right. So now I know you've been off the board for many years now, but put yourself back on and tell me, what do I need to be doing right now to make this thing more successful? What can I be doing? Mr. Chairman Miklos, what should I be doing? What should I be doing?
You got a big stick? We'll start. No. So to me, and again, I think if there, again, and I don't know what you've been doing, so I'm just going to speak as if I've just come in fresh.
Yes.
First thing I would say was, when was the last time all the city councils and the board of supervisors was briefed from a little bit of institutional knowledge to where we are today, and most importantly, the commitments that were made by the people that were in place from the origin and moving forward, because a lot of institutional knowledge doesn't foot forward to a lot of city councils. It doesn't get passed along. Mm-hmm. So bring them up to speed.
Got it.
Short, simple, streets to the
Love it.
You know me.
Yep.
If you can do PowerPoints, that's fine, because you know you're going to be in the packet. Don't talk to them when you put it on the screen. Everybody's read them before you can read back to us.
Okay.
And to me, that's just more the visual effect. And you guys got enough of that. You know, what I've seen in the office here, that will make a nice presentation.
Yes.
And then at some point in time, see if a jurisdiction wants to host a couple public forums.
Sure.
Get them back in the room. Mm-hmm. Let them know, hey, we're here, what you're saying. You know, you want to get off Highway 50 and going through that nightmare you've been going through for 5-6 years? Help us finish the connector. That's what it's being designed for, is to get off of Highway 50.
That's great advice.
So that would be my first blush.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Well, I did recently just do like a 45-minute presentation to El Dorado County supervisors, and it's probably, I need to move down the line and do some more.
I would. I think on a regular continuous basis, that would be appropriate.
Yeah.
Just because, again, and I found this out. So when I was actually the president, statewide president for an organization that was aligned with prisons, because there's a lot of prisons in a lot of the cities we represented, I'd get a new council every couple of years, and the ones going off the council, one of them might have been my board member, and nothing got passed to the new council member. So as soon as a new council got on, every single city that was a member of ACAPS, my board and I would go down and make a presentation to that new city council. Mm-hmm. So they knew exactly what we were doing. They knew exactly the commitment that was needed from them.
Sure.
And we did it every year.
Makes sense.
Every time they changed over, we did it.
All right. Well, I got one last question for you. It has nothing to do with the connector, but the Aquatic Center. How did this Aquatic Center come about? And are you there every weekend as a lifeguard? I mean, what's the deal?
Well, as long as I don't have to wear a Speedo, I would show up there. But yeah, no, that gave a visual to everybody, didn't it? Actually, I still work out, but no, it was a very, very complimentary thing that the, God bless his soul, you know, Mr. Sheldon took it to the Park and Rec Commission and said, you realize we've been wanting a swimming pool in the city of Folsom since 1955, a community swimming pool since 1955. And then going forward, and we were able to put an item on the city council agenda to build a city swimming pool. Well, unfortunately, at that time, we still had the us against them attitude of factions in the city. We had the sports and rec and kid-minded faction versus strictly business, and I don't like those guys anyways. There's a lot of personalities involved in that. Mm. So the two size pools, a 25 and 50, were put on the agenda, and unfortunately, the 25 meter got approved that night. And so I met with the individual council members and asked them what it would take for them to change the vote. Well, I know two absolutely would never change because they were in part of the us against them mentality. The one that had the most sense on that council at that time in terms of business sense was Vice Mayor Dow. Mm. And I sat with her and she said, I'm just concerned about this subsidy. And I said, what's a number that if I go out and raise commitments to reduce that subsidy for the next 3 years, give me a number that you would feel comfortable to put it back on the agenda. So people that don't know out there, if you're on the losing end of a vote, you can't have it reconsidered. You have to have somebody that's on the affirmative side of that vote, put it on the agenda.
Interesting.
So that's why, and I've known Cindy for a very long time. She was actually took over my chair as president of the Chamber of Commerce Board because I was, and she was the vice chair. So when I got on council, she followed me as the president of the board. And then when she got on the city council, she had to give it up. So she said, yeah, this is the number I'm looking at. I'd like to see if we can't reduce it by at least $100,000 a year. I said, okay, if you're giving that commitment, I'll see what I can do. Well, in about a year, now less than a year, about 9 months' time, I got 3-year commitments totaling $175,000 each year for 3 years. And subject to, and I had in writing from all these people that were putting up the money. I mean, I had Home Depot sponsoring the scoreboard. I had money from vendors that I used for their Vladi Page's basketball camp when I was running that for 3 years. Coca-Cola to be specifically. Thank you, Coke. You really helped us a lot. And a bunch of others. And so I went to Vice Mayor Dow and said, Vice Mayor, here it is. I laid all the paperwork down on the table. I said, they're all predicated on signing the dotted line. That's how I met Andy Moran.
Okay.
He was in charge of a lot of the swim teams.
Yep.
We got together and he said, I'll get both swim teams to pony up and we can hit this number. Okay. And so if it wasn't for Andy's involvement with the swim teams, we wouldn't have gotten them on board, but they knew they needed a new pool. And then we looked at all the economic information about what a 50-meter pool can do that a 25 can't. And the numbers were off the charts as far as what you can do.
Okay.
So Cindy put it back on the agenda, true to her word, and it was a 3-2 to switch it to a 50-meter pool. Within, I think it might have been the second year it was completed, we got a phone call from the Olympic Swimming Stars Tour saying, we'd like to bring the tour to Folsom.
Boom. Boom.
We sold out the same day.
Wow.
Same day.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then later on, then we did the play pools, I call it, with all the water structures, stuff like that.
That's where I take my kids now.
Yeah. Well, I actually took Vladi and Paige there one time with the kids from the basketball camp one time. And that was just another selling point for the kids that after a hard day in the sun and sweating, hey, you want to go swimming at the Aquatic Center? And then, of course, we had the kiddie pool where they do the bark and splash and stuff like that. So that's how we ended up getting it done.
Dude, great story, man. Absolutely. I've always wondered because I'm like, obviously I know your name and I see the Aquatic Center. I'm like, I wonder what the story is behind that.
Well, that's
thank you for sharing.
Yeah. It was again, pretty cool because, a lot of folks when I first got on city council thought I was quote unquote aligned with this faction. And then the other faction goes, I'm not going to like him because he's with that faction. And it's like, and so after about 6 months, a couple of votes came up where I voted with that faction. And then this faction they kind of gave me that look like, what are you doing? And I was questioned after the fact. And I said, I'm not with any faction. I'm me.
Right.
And my job is to produce what we can produce based on what the residents' needs and wants are within reason with our budget.
I think you did a great job, sir.
Novel idea, but thank you.
I think you did a great job.
So that was pretty cool to have. That to me was very symbolic of breaking the us against them mentality. And it did.
Yeah. And it's a wonderful facility today. So.
Yep.
Well, sir, thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure.
I mean, it's so great to see you, and best of luck on all of the musician band and all the singing. And
are you gonna be there tonight?
I don't know that I'll be there tonight, but maybe, yeah. So, actually, we have my school's fall festival tonight.
Oh, that's quite all right.
Yeah. But thank you again. This is, the Connector JPA's podcast. We're trying to just tell some stories about the origins, the project. We're doing some project updates. And I wanted to reach out to you and thank you so much for accepting the invitation and sharing your knowledge with us.
Yeah, it'd be my pleasure.
All right. Thank you so much, Steve.
Yeah. Thank you, Derek.